Welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast, where we elevate marketing leaders inside and out. I'm your host, Veronica Rami, master marketer, executive leader, and mentor to ambitious marketing leaders wanting to advance their careers. Each episode is filled with genuine, unscripted conversations with some of the world's top marketing experts, accomplished leaders, and industry trailblazers representing brands, both large and small. Our goal with this podcast and everything we do is to help you master your role, nurture your team, prioritize your well-being, and evolve into an industry-leading Rainmaker. This is the Rainmaker Podcast. Okay, Rainmaker family, I want to introduce you to my next guest, who is also a personal friend and a perfect client of mine as well, Amber Lilyestrom. So Amber is a full-blown CEO, but she is absolutely a rock star Rainmaker in her own right, who has a specialty when it comes to sports marketing. I have this wild ambition one day that I will be contracted in some capacity to help an NFL team in their marketing. This is like a dream that I have. And so when Amber was telling me about her background, I'm like, oh, please, can we have you on the podcast to tell us your story and tell us all things sports marketing? So if you're a sports fan like I am, and you want to kind of peel behind the curtain of what it is to run an entire athletic department at the university level, that's what she did at the most elite level as a former collegiate athlete herself. It's a really beautiful podcast. It gets emotional towards the end. It takes surprising turn, and it's just one of the most entertaining conversations because she's such a pro. You're going to love this episode. So without further ado, please welcome Amber Lilyestrom. Amber, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, hey, V. What's up?
I know this is fun. So we are, just so everybody has context, because you'll hear it in our banter, but like we are really good friends. I'm also helping you in a consultancy capacity as well. And I invited you to be on the podcast to talk about your Rainmaker path, even though you are fully the CEO of your life first business, which I'm really excited to like kind of maybe even end the conversation around, because there's so many marketers that aspire to do their own thing like you've done. But Amber. I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to manifest. I have this fantasy or vision board that one day I will help an NFL team with their marketing. Like I'm obsessed with the NFL's marketing engine. I'm obsessed with like individual teams and their social media efforts. I think it's some of the best storytelling in the world. Like I'm just obsessed. And then when I got to know you as a friend first and see your sports marketing background, I'm like, oh, can we please talk about this on the podcast? Can I ask you all the questions? Because what you did for the University of New Hampshire, being like the youngest of all the youngest things that you could possibly be in that capacity, I want to know all. So take us back to the beginning. How did you get into this? What was your first position in a sports marketing career?
Yeah, my first position was right out of college. I was the captain of the women's soccer team at UNH. And so I bled blue, right? I was like, I understood what it meant to be a UNH Wildcat. I wore the crest on my jersey. I was the captain of the team.
Wow.
And I loved the department, and it was home for me. And so then I graduated and I was like, what the heck am I going to do? Because I had an English degree with a concentration in journalism, sports studies, and also psychology. And I had always been really fascinated about why people do what they do.
Yes.
And understanding like business and consumer behavior and all these things. And so I applied for that job. I really had no appropriate experience, like applicable experience at all, but I had amazing relationships. And I was against another candidate who was actually more qualified than me. But because of my spirit and because of my pedigree and my relationship to the coaches that I was essentially going to be working intimately with to promote their programs, I was the choice.
That's so awesome. And what was your first baby position in this capacity?
So as marketing coordinator, I was making $20,000 for the year, no benefits.
Yeah.
And I truly believed I was like the richest person on the planet. I was so excited. I was like, and I was that girl, I would go to the meetings, and my predecessor, Missy Hoffman, who's like one of the most amazing humans I've ever met in my life. She brought me to meetings for the first like 2 weeks while I was there. Like she was still there, and I got a little training on the job, which was so incredible. And a lot of what she was explaining to me was like all of the quirks around why things were the way they were and how low our budgets were and like how she made it all work. But I would sit with a yellow legal pad in those meetings and take note. I would write every single word down on that page that everybody around the table said. And I would study my notes every night. I was so into it, V. It was
so cute.
Division I level, literally, but also like figuratively, the way I showed up for it, marketing coordinator work.
So I accidentally tripped into marketing by not being able to secure a financial internship. And I had a default and just like settle for a marketing internship that I could find with an MLM. And then I realized like this is epic and fun. And I'm like, why did I even think about majoring in marketing? So because you didn't technically major in marketing, but
Nope.
this is the first baby job that you got at 20 grand a year, which, money's raining upon us. Was marketing what you thought it was going to be? Because I feel like the art of marketing is like a combination of so many different disciplines. It's kind of hard to like define it because it incorporates all the things.
Yeah.
But what was your realization? Like, oh, this is marketing.
Yeah, I think I just knew I was willing to work harder than anybody else. And I
Mm-hmm.
was really creative. And I remember looking at the job description when I was sitting in who would be my future boss's office. And it said things like manage the mascot team and design graphics for newspaper advertisements and write PA scripts for in-game entertainment and produce in-game. I was like, this is just playing. Like all I'm doing is playing. Like this is the most amazing thing I've ever heard of. And I also had in there this little caveat because we had very, very small budgets that I was going to get to oversee an internship program and mentor students. And I was all about mentorship and I was all about developing and growing people. And so I was like, well, sign me up for this. Yeah.
Easy. I mean, I bet your enthusiasm was through the roof. And like, we got to give it to her. She like really wants
Yeah,
this.
I had so much energy too. And they knew like if nothing else, I was gonna be a little workhorse for them. And yeah, and so marketing became just the way that to me, like as I, here we are 20 years later, but
Yeah.
it really is just relationship. And I understood people and I knew people and I understood why, I read people for a living now in a very intimate way. So it's like it was all just so perfect. And it was such the fertile training ground for me to become who sits in this chair today and the way that I help and serve people today. And I look back on it and I have such a tender heart for it because I was in the right time at the right place and the right people said really kind things and they were very generous in supporting me on my journey. And because of that, I had, we'll talk more about what happened next.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. You then got promoted from marketing coordinator to director of marketing. I'm like, damn, you skipped a manager.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So now you're the youngest director in
Yeah,
history.
for sure. I mean, I was like creating my own job
Yeah.
titles and descriptions. Like every 2 years I got promoted. And at this point I was like getting results and doing well and things were moving and we were creating sellouts and different events that hadn't before and creating new programs. And I built a nationally recognized internship program that kids went on and got jobs in professional sports and collegiate sports.
Cool.
So it was just like they had this little like blue chip player and they were like, okay, we'll give you a $5,000 raise in an assistant AD title, know? And I remember when I finally got, I took on essentially like 3 people's jobs to get that director job. And I was doing corporate sponsorship negotiation.
Jeez.
I was writing contracts. I was executing. I loved every second of it. I didn't complain. I thought I had won the lottery.
Yeah.
And so I just kept, being gifted these next zones and I was just thriving in it. And yeah, I became the youngest assistant athletic director for marketing and then associate athletic director for marketing and strategic initiatives at the university. So I got to work with the president's office and everybody on campus and be sort of like a air traffic controller for what all of the sort of university's pursuit of what it was how it was trying to evolve and then like integrating athletics into that because I understood culture in a really unique way.
Mm-hmm. I have to, okay. So if anybody's listening to this conversation, they're like, I don't know what sports marketing is or what it entails, define it. Like, because let's say they do marketing for the apartment industry, they do marketing for the services or B2B or white collar, like define sports marketing at the University of New Hampshire.
So yeah, Division I athletics, we had 7 ticketed sports programs.
Okay.
And so in those sports programs, we had corporate sponsorship opportunities that we were trying to sell. And then most of all, we had these different constituents we were trying to sell tickets to get them in the building, this classic get butts and seats. And so it was season ticket holders. It was, alumni, which is a whole nother demo that you've got to really understand the cultural implications of that. It was the students, which is a whole nother conversation we could talk about. And then it was the community members at large that live in the towns, connecting. So I had all of these different stakeholders I had to constantly be thinking about. And then also the coaches and the alumni of the alums of the programs themselves. So it was like selling tickets to be at the game, selling sponsorship to, promote to the people who are in the audience. And you're doing all of those things all at once.
So you're constantly selling. So even though it's marketing, this is like straight up sales too, in all the ways.
And I mean, I was supporting a ticket sales team, but what they were really doing was like printing the tickets and building the manifests and the whole thing. And then you think about the corporate sales department, he's going to the, waste managements and these big companies and having these negotiations with them. But they would come to me and they would say, Amber, what are the promotions that we can sell that are going to be branded specifically for waste management? EnviroVantage, we have this tradition at the University of New Hampshire where after the first goal is scored on the opponent in men's hockey, there's this idea of like fish the puck out of the net. There's a person, a fraternity, who actually throws a fish, like a dead, huge fish on the ice. And they try to get as close to the goal as they can. It's like been grandfathered into the league and actually like at the Frozen Four level. So you got to understand that that tradition runs so deep that I was at games on spring break, realizing the fraternity brothers weren't coming. And I'm like driving in downtown Manchester, going and buying a fish and bringing this fish back and like asking a fan if they could be in charge of this like huge thing. But we sold it to a sponsor, the cleanup crew of the dead fish. And then they would walk out wearing this costume, the EnviroVantage costume with a trash bag. And then they would pick up the fish and they hold it up like this. And the crowd goes wild and they put it in the bag and they walk off.
This is like part entertainment industry, a little bit of a gladiator, just like all the things. Well, and help me understand, because like I've had guests on the podcast before where they're like from the banking industry, which is like wildly regulated and like really tight. So they don't have that freedom to be this creative or to do these kind of like a fish, dead fish. Is sports marketing, is it highly bureaucratic? Is it regulated? Like what are the constrictions for a marketer to perform?
No, the constrictions would be your league. The league rules, and that will vary per sport and then also per region, right? Like the Hockey East League is where we play, and they grandfathered in a lot of things for a lot of different teams because there's traditions at these universities. And I would say, collegiate athletics is probably, it is a master class, in fandom, in culture, in understanding, multi-dimensional marketing at its finest, because it really is all of these layers. And if you can be a brand sponsor and build an affinity with the fans around something that is a huge tradition, you become untouchable. It becomes, like legacy stuff. So it really was like the most incredible place to learn the art of marketing. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I think that's probably my obsession with sports marketing and the dream one day to represent or work with like an NFL team, because like the fandom, like what you said, even at the beginning of this podcast, you're like, I'm a wildcat and I had it stitched to my your shirt, your jersey, your jacket. And it's like, and people paint their faces and they get tattoos. And it's like, it is beyond marketing. It is full blown identity. Like we talk about culture, but really it's people are absorbing an identity equal to like, I am mom, I am daughter, I am, and you bled those colors. How in your marketing, were you intentional about weaving that identity through and through? Like talk to me, if I was sitting in a boardroom with you, what's the conversation like around this?
Oh yeah. I mean, down to knowing the PMS colors of our brand, protecting the logo and any iteration off of that was being misrepresented, to language, to like the apostrophe on the abbreviation of the word cats down to like the deepest level, what we want to be involved in and what we won't partner with, and having to really pay attention to that, the protection of the brand, because it bleeds out to the university. And, we would get our asses handed to us also if we stepped over a line by the university. So you have like a big brother that you kind of belong to, and then you have all of these alums. So there's so many, it's a 360 degree view you're looking at all the time. And then you're also trying to like find those appropriate edges to create new tradition to achieve the goals. And so I created this thing called the Cat Pack Kickoff that is now a tradition that continues on. And basically my argument for it was, we can't get these kids to come from down campus in February during a snowstorm to a basketball game because they've never set foot in Lundholm Gymnasium. So they don't actually understand what it means to come and experience a basketball game. And of course, our team wasn't the best of the best. And so they weren't consistent with winning. And so I had to come up with traditions. I had to create new things in the culture to imprint that understanding the psychology of these students. If they don't feel comfortable, they're not going to come.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Cat Pack Kickoff is this event that we've installed in the curriculum of freshman, kickoff weekend, essentially, where they walk up, they come, the football coach comes out and like froths at the mouth and gives them this big speech. Like you want to like run through a wall after that speech. The band comes out, the marching band, and plays the fight song, the mascots, the cheerleaders. I mean, it's like, you are like, whoa, on your like first weekend of being there. And then we have this cat statue, this big, beautiful metal cat statue. And we would have the kids walk down the street and they do this thing called pat the cat. So they like touch the cat. And we created this tradition of like, it's a good luck thing to go pat the cat. And so the cat's nose is like gold now, which I feel very proud of because people do it. The president of the university would be there with some of the coaches, and it was just like this incredible thing. We have thousands and thousands of kids coming and doing this tradition, and they would get their Cat Pack official student section t-shirt, which I did a whole contest for the kids to compete for the t-shirt. It has the shield on it, and it's like, it's an installation. And so now they do it every single year. And I just feel so proud of it because it's a mirror for what it feels like to be a part of this institution.
I'm so fascinated by this. I'm actually really glad that you answered that question that way, because I was going to ask you, what's your proudest moment or your, proudest achievement? But now another question I desperately want to ask you is, how did somebody so young become so persuasive to get buy-in at the levels that you're talking about, where it was like university president and, whatever dignitaries or the mayor, I don't know. But like, how did somebody so young become so persuasive and so effective in buy-in?
Yeah.
Because anybody who's listening needs to hear what you're about to share, because this is a skill that they need.
Yeah. I mean, it was all relational, and I had great mentors, and it wasn't an ego play. I think that's the biggest thing. I really believed what I was saying, and I really believed in what we were trying to do. And I think that was sort of like pure, it was just like, this is what I think we need to do. And I was so fully on board. Like it really wasn't about me. And anytime I would make it about me, or I'd feel like, that's when things kind of get like shaky ground. But it was really about, I think the other thing you have to understand when you work in an athletic department like that, I know we talk about team in all these places. We support teams. We support student athletes. This is their experience. And so for me, from an integrity standpoint, I walked those hallways. That was my home. That was where I grew up, and so it just had like this extra level of integrity for me that I was honoring, and I just believed in it so much. And so I think that's really the core of it, was that belief piece, the relationships. And as a team, when I think about my life as a soccer player, there's 11 of us on the field, there's those on the bench. You'll run through a wall for each other. And so these people were my teammates on that same level. I think about my team members like that. I will run through a wall for them.
Right. Yeah.
That's just installed in me. And so that athlete is always there. And I think that, and then that competitive edge, right? It was like, I want to win the game right now. And we were literally at games. So I'm trying to get as many people in the building because I believe in the kids on the ice. And I don't know to call them kids, but the student athletes on the ice. And I want them to have this like incredible experience and have the feeling of all of their fans being behind them and beating that other team. And so, there's just like, I have so many memories of incredible moments where we had big wins and the sold out. And it's like, to see the coach smile, to see the AD be like, yes, we did it, to see the donors like, and then watching the sellouts happen and stuff. It was the best. I mean, I would like, if I was going to ever go do anything again, I would like go back to collegiate athletics. It's like the best job in the entire world.
I make those jokes all the time. Like, if this whole marketing thing for me doesn't work out, I would go back and do this thing. What I wrote on my notes while you're beautifully expressing, like, just, I can still feel your enthusiasm. Oh my gosh. Conviction sells, man. Your empathetic, genuine, unabashed conviction behind what you were, pitching, whether it was a new idea or
Yeah.
a new concept or
Every
a new
time.
tradition,
Mm-hmm.
is so seducing. When people come with unwavering conviction behind the thing, it's like I would feel stupid not betting on somebody that had that type of juice in like
Yeah.
their being. And I think that's really cool because I think a lot of young professionals, they tend to play small, or they don't want to disrupt, or they don't want to overstep. And so out of overcautiousness, they don't show up in that full power conviction that actually could be their competitive advantage. And so to hear you
Yeah.
say it, I think is actually a good reminder for all of us.
I had huge range too, V, which I think is important to honor my mentors because they gave me a long leash.
Mm.
And they had to because they couldn't do it all. I gave my interns an equally long leash, and sometimes there were some challenging learning opportunities, but I was willing to let those kids have those opportunities because I knew they would be better for it as a result in the same ways that I was. And I certainly had a lot of flops and publicly humiliated moments. You're taking a risk in front of thousands of people on a live stage. Like there's not a huge margin for error. And I certainly found all of those margins and how far I could push with things. But my mentors, Marty Scarano, Dot Sheehan, they were two of the most important. And Steve Metcalf, like those guys had my back, even when I would make a mistake. And if I was going to get chastised for it, whatever, they had my back, And so I knew that they had my back. So I think from a leadership perspective, as leaders, we have to have our people's backs. We have got to have our people's backs, and we have to give them the opportunity to make mistakes so that they can actually learn and like recommit. And then we can encourage them in that process is just, we can't talk about it enough, truly. And that's a huge part of why I was able to achieve what I did in my career there.
Pause the recording, mic drop, we're done, like wrap it up. I'm like, yeah. Well, and I actually want to swing back to what you were saying, because I love asking guests, what some of your proudest achievements or whatever, but also like, I really want to hear about a story where you quote unquote got your ass handed to you. Because I remember I sent, as an email marketing manager at ancestry.com, I sent an email. I was the final deployment button pusher that sent out an email to all of our paying subscribers on behalf of the CEO, Tim. And it said, "Dear #first name hashtag" to everybody, because it didn't dynamically pull the field. And it had gone through a QA team, it had gone through my manager, it had gone through like bazillions of hands, but I was the final hand that pushed deploy inside of our email service provider. And I cried, and I didn't get fired, but I was like beside myself in this catastrophic mistake. Now I laugh because I'm like, that's nothing. But hey Rainmakers, it's Veronica, and we'll get back to today's episode. But before that, I have an exciting invitation for all of you aspiring, ambitious marketing leaders. If you are serious about advancing your career in marketing and you're looking for an expert to give you some personal insights, guidance, tips, then I'm going to invite you to schedule a free Pathway to Promotion call with me. This is a special one-on-one call with just you and me to discuss your current roadblocks in your career, your long-term aspirations and ambition, and the next best step for you and your personal promotion. Head to pathwaycall.com or click the link in my show notes to schedule your free Pathway to Promotion call. Now back to today's episode. Tell me, getting your ass handed to you, but more importantly, what that taught you too. I love learning lessons like that.
Oh, let me see which one I choose from. There's so many. Yeah. I mean, when you're talking, charged football environments, because you're also there doing game presentation on, like, the stakes are so high. These guys are like playing for the playoffs. Like, you can't mess it up with your pregame show. So my perfect example, I arrange for skydivers to come to deliver a game ball to the center of the field and to hand it to Gnarls, the mascot that I invented. So we have two mascots. We had one. It was like a kitten, Wildy cat. Loved it so much. I was like, this is really embarrassing. We go to national championships and we have like a little kitten that's getting checked by Goldie the gopher. So we invented this like dude named Gnarls. That's a whole story for another day, but he's like a baller. And so Gnarls is at the center of the field. He's going to receive the ball from the skydivers. And I've got the guy on the ground. The planes are up. We had our whole walkthrough. We're like, timeline is good. It's also senior day, which is like I think back on how masochistic this was. It's also a TV game. So we have got a TV timeline I'm navigating. We've got about 30 parents on the sidelines for cheerleaders and for athletes. We've got the marching band. I've got the guy with the radio. I've got my, and this day, the head coach decides he really wants to see the pregame show. Coach Mac never comes for the pregame show, but this day, because Amber has sold it so well, the team's coming out early from their game day talk to watch the skydivers. Okay. So I am like, all right, we're going good. I'm on pins and needles. And then the guy on the radio goes, I lost contact. And I'm like, what do you mean you lost contact? He's like, I can't reach them. And I'm like, so what does that mean? We don't see the planes anywhere. It is like time for the guys to be dropping from, they should be dropping from the sky. They are nowhere to be seen. And at this point, there's no way to intervene. We can't stop it. And so the guy has no contact. My deputy AD is like, so where are the skydivers? And I'm like, I don't know. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, don't talk to me right now. I can't talk about this right now. So I make the call to cue the senior day. I tell the PA announcer, start senior day. So we do this early. Senior day's going through. Still no skydivers.
Oh no.
And the other rule is you can't have anybody on the field when the skydivers are coming down.
Sure,
but I had
safety.
The whole procession on the field. I've made this judgment call. So I'm out there. Like, here we are. And long story long, I somehow get to the last senior and they come through and then we see the guys drop out of the sky. We clear the field. I call it. By the grace of God, I have no idea how we did it, V, but we made the sort of like second TV timeline. Like, we did it. We made it. The guy falls down. But when they drop out of the sky, this is the other part where my heart like literally dropped to the field. And I thought I was going to like have every physical bodily reaction that one could have.
Throw up?
I was like, I'm going to die. Like, I'm just going to die right now. And the coach is standing there like this. Like, he's like, I can feel the fire coming off of him. The guy goes, it's going to take them about 5 minutes to get to the field. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Can they go faster?
I'm like, how do they go faster? He's like, it's gravity. I don't know what to tell you. And so they get there. The band plays the thing. We do it. We end up winning the game at senior day. It's a happy story. But I'll tell you, on Monday, Coach comes in my office and he closes the door. And at this point, I'm like, Harry Potter, give me an invisibility cloak. Like, how can I get out of here?
You're just a baby.
And he goes, are we allowed to swear on this show?
Yes.
He says, Amber, you're the best fucking associate athletic director in this place, but don't ever do that again. And I was like, okay, coach. And he's like, I love you, kid. And he walked out and I was like, yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, you're a phenomenal storyteller. I like was hanging on by every word. I'm like, because then I was like, oh, they didn't come. And then I started playing out scenarios where like they came in the middle of the game and they just dropped on the football player or something. I don't even know. I just was like, what's happening? Oh man.
It worked, but I probably lost a few years off my life from that one.
Oh yeah, definitely. We definitely aged. And that's the thing about marketing. And I think that's why marketers are just built differently, because we're freaks. Like, I too crave the heat of the arena. I love the Super Bowl moments of like camera 1, camera 6, like where everything's flying off at any given time. I mean, you're fried, but like I also am addicted. Like, I love it. And so I think that's why I think it's so fun with sports marketing, because like just the energy that you already feel being a participant in a game, being a fan, but then being on behind that, like you're the Wizard of Oz, you're behind the curtain that's making all the magic happen. Yeah. It's like, stop it. That's so addicting.
And you also, this is why I think sport marketing pros are actually like elite, like on a whole nother plane, because you don't know what's going to happen and you have no control of how the game's going to go.
Sure. Yeah.
And so you're like, I might be actually hosting like a huge playoff game with like major ticket sales and skipping Thanksgiving entirely. Like, at the end of this game, I don't know what's going to happen. Or I'm going home and eating turkey with my family. And it's like, you live that way when you have 7 ticketed sports going all at the same time.
Yeah.
You just never know what's going to happen. So it's like adrenaline, rush galore, junkies galore. It's definitely a lifestyle that is not for everybody.
Well, do you know what? Maybe it's funny because it hasn't posted yet by the time we've recorded this podcast, but I did a reel. Maybe it will by the time we drop this. But like, I recorded a reel about like how I forecast that higher education institutions, they're going to have a serious like a marketing crisis. If I was on the marketing team for the university of anything, I'd be like literally panicking, because I feel like a lot of millennial parents, and obviously generations younger than ours, don't value formal institutions and diplomas the way that our parents'
Yeah.
generations did, right?
Yeah.
And so you see this massive drop off in enrollments, and universities are struggling, and record low this and record low that, with like trade schools, making up the difference. But maybe sports marketing teams for collegiate is the saving grace. Like, we can't get them to come for school, but we can get them to come for sports.
I mean, certainly like in the deep South, when you think about it, it's like on another
Yeah.
level, like those guys.
Gosh.
It was so cool getting to be I was part of the National Association of Collegiate Marketing Administrators board.
Yeah.
And I was actually set to become the president of the board. And I was the third vice president at the time that I ended up leaving to launch my company and be home with my daughter and all that. But I was in there with like, Craig from Oregon and Eric from South Carolina. And so I'm with like all these folks from these huge schools, and their challenges were so different than mine, but it was so incredible to like mastermind with them. Like I didn't realize it at the time, like I was in a mastermind
Yep.
for sport marketing pros, and it was my favorite thing in the entire world.
Yeah.
We went to Montana. We went to all these cool places at each other's schools and did all these really experiential, awesome things. And I learned so much, but we had different types of problems that we were navigating. And it was really cool to get to, mind share together on that.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I mean, sometimes you don't hear such a positive experience for young females in more male dominated industries. So it's always
you got it. I didn't think I
Yes.
was going to put up with any of that.
Yes.
Please.
It's all, yeah, it's obviously there. Okay. I want to actually, this is important to me that we capture this, because like I said, I think you were doing wildly well and getting promoted and having advancement and having opportunities. And then you bowed out.
Yeah.
You bowed out to do life on your own terms. Was it your daughter? Was it another catalyst? Like, I feel like everybody has that moment when the ocean calls, Moana. Like,
Yeah.
what was your siren? Like, when was it? I can't do this anymore, despite the success and the achievements and the adrenaline.
I have always had the vision and calling to know that I wanted to be an author and a speaker and help people in different ways, just part of my personal life journey. And so it was like starting to knock probably around like 2010. And I was starting to like get really interested in entrepreneurship, and I was learning kind of behind the scenes about people's other models and ways of doing things. And what I was realizing was like I was really missing my life. I was working, definitely 40, if not 60, sometimes 80-hour weeks because of the nights and the weekends and all of this. And it was like great for those years of my life when I'm in my 20s into like, my early 30s. But I was pregnant with my daughter, and I did actually have a near-death experience on the day that she was born. And so that was like an absolute, quantum shift in consciousness. And it was an awakening. And like, you can't, you're not the same person that you were. And now you have a child. And so when I went back to work, it just like didn't feel the same. And I wasn't willing to miss the moments that I couldn't get a replay on, I just wasn't. And it was that day I was sitting in a meeting, and my daycare provider texted, and she's like, she's getting really close to walking. She's about 8 months old. And I just felt my whole my whole heart just like shattered. And it was like my body, it makes me cry just to talk about it. I'm like,
because you weren't there.
I can't do it. Like, I can't do this. I can't do this. So when she was 9 months is when I gave my notice. And, when to reflect to one of my most proud moments, my department hosted I call it my retirement party. They hosted a party for me, and there were like everybody in the department and people from all over campus, and my parents came. It was just like, and I got to like give a speech, and like they talked about me, and they gave me this thing that they only give to people who are in the Hall of Fame. And it's the cat statue. I don't know why it's not in my office yet, but it's down in the house.
It needs to be in the tree house.
It's the actual cat statue replica. It's this beautiful thing. And they gave it to me. And it will always forever be one of the most important moments, of my life. And so I just knew like, I can't be her anymore, because I'm not her anymore.
Yeah. There was life before this moment, and there was life after this moment.
Yeah. Yep.
And that's, I think too, like, that's why people are like, you can't have it all. And I'm like, no, but you can if the all changes.
That's right.
Right? If the definition of having it all
Like
has to
what's
be
all?
redefined.
Define all, and then compare notes. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing that I'm obsessed with you about is like, even in this new pursuit of entrepreneurship and having a business, you are still just as empathetic, enthusiastic, conviction rich when it comes to your clients living a life first business. And so, like, to hear the genesis of your entrepreneurial journey also being that life first choice,
Yeah.
like, stop it. Stop it right now. So, like, talk to me about what it's like today for you, like your family life, Amber, because like all of that sports marketing, Amber, it's not gone. Like
No.
I mean, you're that animal inside still. I can feel it every time I
Yeah.
talk to you. But like, how do you channel it now while still holding space for this beautiful life you've created in the woods?
Yeah. So I've been doing this for 10 years now, which is so crazy to think back to that. I have a 10-year-old. So my business and my daughter are always going to track the same age, And I think it's really it's about seasons, V, and I'm in this one with a 10-year-old and a 2-year-old. And I say to my husband all the time, in moments we feel tired or whatever, we just look at each other and we go 10 and 2. And I don't mean like your hand position on the wheel. I mean, those are our kids' ages. We get a 10 and 2 Christmas. We get a 10 and 2 Halloween once. And so it's like, same thing as an athlete. You take the shot, you get one shot to take that shot, and you got to take it. And so I don't want to get to the end of this time frame when my kids are small, where I look back and I go, where was I? I don't get a replay on this. I don't get to relive that. I get to do it one time. And so I take that really, really seriously, and it's an integrity thing for me. And so it's like, I've gotta, and this is the truth. And I actually don't talk about this that often because I'm just like in this world of coaching and helping people. But failure wasn't an option.
Yeah.
It was just like, I'm going to put the ball in the back of the net like I always do. It's who I am. And so I'm going to build this business because it will support the life that I'm going to live. I didn't have a backup plan. I just had to make my business work. And so I had to put everything I had at it. And then the caveat was this realization, man, look what I've created these last 10 years, putting everything I have at it. Look at how much UNH Athletics has transformed because of my imprint and my ripple effect and my full commitment to being a part of this organization. Imagine with me for a second, Amber, what could the next 10 years of your life look like if you put everything at your life first business? And I didn't have that language back then, but that's what I was creating. And what could your children look and feel like? What could the relationship you have with them and your partner look like? And over these 10 years, we've achieved so many miraculous things. It could put me into a puddle, looking at the world we've created in the woods here, building this house, building this treehouse space where I get to host clients and have them come here and like share the deep dark chocolate stuff that's really hard that they need support with, and create an intimate space for transformation. All the events so that's really cool because I would produce over like 100 events a year in my job. A year. That was a year. So that's 1,000 events I was producing. And so in my entrepreneurial career, I've produced Ignite Your Soul Summit, Ignite Your Business events. And so I am there with like the most incredible timeline you've ever seen in your entire life, because it's straight from the files of my Division I athletic administrator.
Totally.
The way that I produce music, people say to me, the way you do music is like on another planet. I'm like, lady, I was responsible for the in-game introductions and music and fan experience to help us win games. I understand how music creates emotion, and I know how to artfully do it and create experiences that like make people have these huge breakthroughs. And so I get to do all those things, but I don't have to work 80 hours. I don't have to go there when the losing team. Like I just get to be the MVP, and I get to bring all my best friends up and my teammates on the stage, and we get to create these incredible experiences and help women. And I coach men as well, but help the women in my community break through into their next level of living their life to the fullest and not waiting for what until you have regret, as like the shadow that follows you around everywhere. Yeah.
Hold on a minute. I'm like beside myself. People can't see, if you're listening to this podcast, you can't see me like I'm going to church, Amber Lilyestrom Church. I'm just like, yeah, like your discipline. I'm in awe of your discipline. I'm in awe of your work ethic. But what's so cool is that work ethic is now your life ethic. I'm like,
Oh, that's good. V,
that's
that's
so
good.
good.
Write it down.
Write it down. That's a good one. That's a good word truffle. But no, it is like none of that is lost. It's never been lost. It's just, I'm so in awe of how you have been so intentional and hyper aware of its metamorphosis and its rechanneling in a different way, in a different direction that is so on par with the woman and the mother and the wife that you will not accept anything less from.
Yep.
Like, we will not. There is a standard and it will be met.
It's not an option.
Yeah. It's not an option. It's not an option. I will not have regret.
No, and you know what helps me with it? Because I'm such a relational person. I care about people so much. It's like, I care so much about people.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, I'm going to hold myself to a high standard because of that deep care.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, I it's like I owe so much to my parents, and it wasn't easy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there's a lot of how my life is designed and my model's designed and the way I do the work that I do now is actually specifically because of some of the really hard things growing up.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like they did the best they could.
Sure.
They sure did. They did the best they could with what they had.
Yeah.
And so it's an act of like reverence in terms of what I do here. And I purposely today, but every time I speak on stages, I wear this ring that you can see, V, this big,
beautiful,
this one here.
Yes.
And this is my great grandmother's ring. And I wear it because, you know, you can fill in the blank, because I don't sit in this chair today having this conversation with you if it weren't for her, and if it weren't for my grandmother, and it weren't for my mother, and the sacrifices and all the effort that they put forth to make it possible for me to tell these stories and to be this version of me. And I didn't get here alone. That's for sure.
You guys aren't seeing this on camera. I'm also wearing my grandfather's ring that he gave me. He just passed a couple months ago. So I too give all of my credit to Cuban immigrants who risked everything for me to have everything. Yeah. You know, and I think that's a really, okay, here's, people need to understand, Amber and I are friends. We walks on the regular. And so I'm just almost like grateful that people got a chance to like witness us. Like, it's like our relationship is now forever like on camera. And I'm really happy about it. And I don't want to get off, but I can't also keep you forever indefinitely. And we've talked about like, I'm going to your tree house. You're going to come to the beach house. This is like, we need to be in person together more often. Something that we do on the podcast is we let our guest have the final say, final question. So I don't even know what's going to happen right now, but is there anything that you wish to ask?
Yeah. I mean, I know you do this, but I feel like we've teed it up in maybe a different direction than the way you normally might do this. And I guess it might be, why do you believe, V, that a life first or a life first business or life first career is so important? Because I know you have one.
Well, I do. And it's funny, I had a catalyst, or one of those really significant moments in my life like you did. It was actually, so I don't talk about this often. Actually, I don't think I've ever said it on the podcast. So I've been pregnant 3 times, but I have 2 man cubs walking the earth, right? And anybody that's ever experienced loss, you understand, you know, the fear that comes with trying again. And so when we were pregnant with my oldest, Miles, you know, everything was wildly precious, but it also felt very high stakes and dangerous. And you know, I couldn't like breathe until he was here in my hands, screaming his head off, right? And so I'm on my maternity leave, and I was having wild success. I, like you, just youngest woman in the room, like all of those, you know, platitudes. And I was getting promoted and all these fun things. And I was a director at a very, very, very successful software company. And we were just like skyrocket hockey stick revenue success. And I was managing a $21 million department and like all these things. And now I have this infant that I worked so hard and experienced so much to just have. And my parents were like, you know, the Cubans are like, well, we don't want to be apart from you. This is our first grandbaby. They had also gone through the trauma of the loss, you know, like the first grandbaby and stuff like that. So they were like seriously contemplating moving from Florida to Utah, where my husband and I were residing, where the company was located. And we took the weekend off to do like a little staycation in St. George, Utah, and with this little infant, and it was our first journey away. And I just had, because of conversation, I just had this enormous like God moment that was like, what the hell am I doing? Where I'm willing to let my parents, my family, my entire world revolve around this job versus around this child. Like if my world revolved around Miles, what would that look like? Not revolved around Entrada. And I loved Entrada, and Entrada loved me. Like this was not a bad relationship. I wasn't leaving a bad job. And what that meant was not living in Utah. Actually, what it meant was moving my ass to Florida, where this child could be raised in the most beloved little nest of Latin feathers that you could possibly imagine. Okay. And that was really scary because this was obviously pre-COVID and everything like that. And so the company was aggressively anti-remote employees of any kind, not even salespeople. They didn't like it. And the CEO, that came from him. And so I scheduled a meeting with my boss, the chief customer advocate at the time, Josh. And when I was still technically on my maternity leave, and I actually went to the office with like, you know, what is it called when you're like leaking? Like I had all like, I was like all strapped. On, yeah. I was all strapped up under my clothes, ready to go to battle, literally, and not leak anywhere. And I walked into the office and he's like, "You're quitting, huh?" And I'm like, "No, I think something worse." He's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "I'm moving to Florida and I don't know if you guys want to keep me employed." He's like, "Oh." I'm like, "I would love to." I like pitched him 3 different jobs. Like I could be this, or I could be this, or I could be this. Like I never in a million years, I thought I could hold on to my director position with an entire team of like 50 people from Florida. He's like, "I don't know. I got to talk to Dave. I got to like, I can't give permission on this." And I'm like, okay. Like I have to move to Florida. It's my family first. And not only was that terrifying and scary, and I made way more money than my husband did at the time. And we just had a baby and all this stuff. And so we started basically we did all the logistics, moving truck, this sold, like whether they said yes, it didn't matter. The decision was already made for me. Thankfully, they said, yes, we'll try it on a 90-day basis. But here's the thing. This is how God works. They said, we'll give you 90 days to see if we can make this work. What I interpret that was like, we're going to give you 90 days back employed so you don't sue us for firing you on your maternity leave. So that's how I interpret it. So we get to Florida. I'm like, Scott, like I'm probably not going to have a job in 90 days, but we're here now. And he's like, well, let's start an agency. So we started, that was really like, now I'm jumping into entrepreneurship because my husband persuaded me to do it. It made sound sense. And then for 2 years, I did both, built this agency and still had the corporate job and had another baby before. Like, that was stupid. I would never do it again. But anyways, like my life has never been the same because I made that choice for Miles, because in that moment, I've actually never shared that story publicly, but I've lived my life family first, life first since 2019.
It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for asking me. You and I we have a lot of parallels, I think, in your career, my career, and I adore you.
Same. So grateful.
Please you. Well, okay. Obviously, we'll do all the links and stuff. But what's your number one preference? If somebody wanted to reach out to you and tell you how meaningful this conversation was for them, where do you want them to like communicate with you most?
I mean, I really love Instagram. Okay. It is such a fun place to hang. So please DM and tell me about you and what's going on. And it will be me. There's nobody that
100. I know that
my Instagram is me. Yep. It's me. And I would love to connect.
Amber is the kind of provider that it's her and only her. It's high proximity, high intimacy, but also deep, deep vulnerability. And you just need to know that when being in her aura, it is so soul giving. I cannot even testify more.
Thank you for that.
Okay, my friend, thank you for being on today's Rainmaker podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us on today's Rainmaker podcast. Marketers help other marketers. So if there's a marketer in your life who could really use a new perspective in a way that helps them advance their career, please pass this episode forward, share, leave us a review. Everything helps as we embark on helping as many marketers elevate themselves inside and out. You can always visit veronicarami.com for today's show notes, additional links to some free resources and tools for you to help you advance your career. You can always connect with us on social media at @viarami if you want more behind the scenes or a way for us to connect personally. Until next time, my friends, make it rain.